Hey, Kate here with Wild Sacred Journey and another creature comfort video. These are videos to awaken, inspire, give context to, and comfort your creature self on your journey from unplugging from the machine and kind of returning to a more human and humane way of, being in relationship. Relationship with self and with the world around us. So this video I'm recording kind of right around the time of Imbolc. Imbolc is more in the Cailleach, the Scottish-Irish tradition. And it's a cross-quarter day. So those are sort of those in-between celebrations. So not the solstices and the equinoxes, but the ones in between, often treated as fire festivals. And so this is the one that happens end of January, beginning of February, and it marks the official beginning of spring, the light half of the year. So ancient cultures, many of them sort of divided the world actually into a light half of the year, kind of two main seasons, the light half of the year and the dark half of the year. So in the Northern Hemisphere, we're, officially entering spring and the light half of the year when the Cailleach, the old woman of winter, an ancient, land goddess, creator of the land goddess, in those same traditions, gives way. Her reign is winter, and she gives way, or in some versions of the story, she dies and is rebirthed again as Brigid. The goddess in many ways, of poetry and smithcraft and fire, but also protector of houses and crops and, sort of that domestic life. So, Imbolc translates out to in the belly, and it's kind of considered the time of quickening. So it refers to the lambs and the sheep. The sheep are starting to lamb, and the ewes are starting to lactate. And so this would be sort of the moment when some of the first milk would be coming in after a winter of just sort of whatever you could have stored up. But it's also kind of a time too when, if you saw my video on winter solstice, these old traditions, we celebrate things before the peak has arrived. We're paying deeper attention than what we in our modern world are used to paying attention. So we're used to kind of paying attention to things and noticing them when they're already here. But our longer ago ancestors, our more animist land connected ancestors, would have been paying deeper attention to things all along. And so they would have been celebrating and honoring things as they were beginning or as they were maybe coming, partly because then it was kind of understood that, that honoring those things, that celebrating those things, whether through ritual or sort of more formal ceremonies, was a way of helping call them in too. So it's kind of like a gratitude practice. We say thank you for the things we want to have arrive, and we say thank you in advance, and they're more likely to show up, or we start celebrating the ways that even if it's not arrived in its fullest form yet, the ways that what we're wanting is kind of already showing up a bit in our lives. And if we can celebrate that and honor that, we're more likely to kind of keep feeding it with our attention, with our energy, with our gratitude, and with our actions. And so then we tend to find that what we feed grows, and that's not just literally, that's also kind of in the subtle realms, right? So if we want spring to come, we start feeding it now, We start feeding it at the winter solstice too, but this is really the beginning of spring. So we're starting to feed kind of more of that now. So if this is kind of this moment of in the belly, in the, what's quickening under the soil, right? Like in the pregnant belly of the earth, what's quickening, right now we're actually still, you can see over my shoulder, we've got a lot of snow and ice on the ground, and it stayed really cold. So it isn't going anywhere right now. And I think many of us are maybe experiencing that. So it looks really wintry outside. It feels very wintry outside. And yet there is a quickening that's happening. There's stirrings, right? The first kicks, you know. When a seed sprouts, the first root it puts down is actually more of like a, you know, a long, thin taproot, right? And it's called the radical root, actually. So this is a time maybe when the seeds are starting to break, right? Like life is kicking at its shell. It wants to kind of start growing, and it may be happening underneath the soil, and it may not be happening, you know, to our eyes, but within the next couple months, the sap will start running again in the trees, you know? So there's the beginnings of that are happening now. But these portals between the subtle realms and the physical realm, right? The portal where a soul can come through from the subtle realm to kind of become manifest on earth, right? That's the birth process, the quickening in the belly, the gestation, and then the birth process. So the portal that opens for that to happen would be the same portal that souls who are leaving the earth would pass through, right? So there's this beautiful kind of, even though we are celebrating life, you know, our longer ago ancestors would have understood, as Martine Prechtel puts it, you know, the idea that grief and praise are the same thing, really. And both of them are expressions of love. And so as we humans are in deeper relationship, you know, animism is really a practice of relationship. It's an understanding that everything is conscious, therefore everything is an invitation to relationship. We are all part of this big web of life, right? So that includes our relationship with the natural world. So that's part of why myths are full of stories. I suspect that's why myths are full of stories of humans marrying creatures of the other world in some kind of way, coming into union in some kind of way with whether it's beasts or strangers in green cloaks or, you know, plants, or, you know, there's sort of these strange moments, strange to our modern minds, moments where a human marries an animal or marries a plant or, is in union in some way with those things. And this is because our ancestors, our longer ago ancestors, probably understood the world as being this constant, like, creation. Life comes from lovemaking. It comes from union, right? So we have to be in union in order for life to keep happening. We have to be in relationship. And so to be in relationship is to be in love. And to be in love is to be practicing grief and praise all the time. So here in Imbolc, when we're still kind of, the days they're lengthening, but they're still not very long, and it might be quite cold, and there might still be snow and ice, and the winds might bite, you know, and things might still be really lean. We're celebrating the coming of life. We're trusting that if we feed love, if we feed relationship, if we praise, right, life, that more life will come. But if we're praising life, we also have to grieve, you know. Both of those we can't have one without the other. Both are expressions of how deeply we love. So in this moment, I would invite you, if you're celebrating, there's a lot of different folk traditions that you could try and tap into to celebrate. But if you want to just kind of play around with the idea of like looking at, okay, what in my life or what in the natural world around me, where do I maybe see slivers that life is quickening? Or if I don't see them with my physical eyes yet, where can I sense it happening? Or where can I choose to notice it happening? Can I pay deep enough attention that I can sense something happening? And then can I praise that? You know, can I celebrate that in some way? Can I honor that? Can I give thanks for that? Can I feed that? And then what do I have to let go of? What do I have to lose? What do I have to release, perhaps, in order to feed that, in order to praise that, you know, to give something to that life? And so it might even be too, you might ask that question to yourself looking at the natural world, or you might also look at it kind of like within your own personal life. What things have kind of been coming first through dreams maybe, or through intuition, or through whispers, or through inspiration and ideas, right? Like what first kind of came from the ether, the creative thought came from the ether, landed first kind of in your mind, in your dreams, right? And then maybe you started speaking it, or maybe you started taking small steps towards it, right? And so that's kind of this quickening period, is that what now are you kind of working to slowly start laying the groundwork for? What are you slowly starting to feed so that then it might blossom, fruit, grow healthily as the natural world kind of takes us more into that growing season. And, we're not at this stage yet in the natural world, but there will come a time in spring when things have to be pruned, right? Orchard trees, blossoms might have to be thinned if there are a lot of blossoms, and that's some of where this going back and forth. Frost can actually be a great thinner. So sometimes a nice frost, not too much frost, but just enough frost right after fruit trees have blossomed can actually be really good for it. If there's too many blossoms, while we might think more blossoms, more fruit is a good thing, too many blossoms means the fruit will be smaller, they're closer together, they're more likely to trap moisture, to mold, to get disease, right? So often there's a thinning, a pruning process that has to happen in order for life to be able to grow vigorously, vibrantly, vitally. More is not better. And the natural world shows us that all the time. So as you're sitting with this question of what's quickening in your life, in this particular threshold moment, this sort of birth-death moment here, right at kind of the threshold between the winter and the spring, right? Between the dark half of the year and the light half of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. As you're sitting at that threshold, yes, you're paying attention to what is maybe wanting to come through you in the coming weeks, days, months, but you're also paying attention to what might you need to prune back, or to let die, or to let become compost, or to not feed, so that the thing that you are feeding can grow more vigorously. And so by these things, then we hold that, yes, we're standing at this threshold between the death, dark times of winter, right? Those grief times, those dream times, those rest times, and that threshold into the light half of the year, the growing times, the fruiting times, the nourishing times. But when we stand at that threshold, we get the invitation to recognize that life and death go hand in hand. And as I've said before in another video, it's not death that's the opposite of life, or the absence of life. It's actually like vacancy, it's numbness, it's stagnancy. Those are the things that are actually working counter to life. And that's more what we tend to find in these more machine-driven, systems and ways of looking at the world and ways of living. It wants constant progress. It doesn't want anything to break down. It wants, life, right? Like more. And, from a symbolic and spiritual perspective, if you look at what cancer is, cancer are cells that don't stop growing, that just keep growing too much, right? So perhaps there is a message in there for us humans when we look at what seems to be a massive uptick in the last, decades, 100 years, 200 years, whatever it is. There seems to be an uptick in cancer. And again, some of it might be we're diagnosing it, we have the technology now, blah, 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 right? Sure. And it might be that we are seeing our own internal unchecked growth, internalized unchecked growth, that we've internalized from capitalism, from industry, from empire, right? That we've internalized that, and it is now manifesting through our bodies as unchecked growth in disease form. something to think about. So yeah, life and death, side by side. Here we are at Imbolc. Blessings upon us. And yeah, so, just let me know. As always, I welcome hearing any comments or thoughts that this might have stirred. Liking, sharing, subscribing. I know you probably get tired of hearing that, but it really does, help boost these videos in the algorithm. So if you got something from this and you think this is a message that other people would hear, hey, even if you send it to someone that's amazing and helpful. Yeah, and just stay tuned for more of these kinds of thoughts and musings. And I'm one of the things that's gestating through me right now is in me, and kind of birthing through me is some guidebooks and other offerings I'll have to kind of help you on this journey of, becoming creature again. So stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in now.